What do you do when the life you've built starts whispering, "It's a lie"? My name is Evan Blake, 38 years old, an HVAC technician from Mobile, Alabama, where the air's thick with humidity and secrets hide in plain sight. For nearly 2 decades, I've spent my days crawling through attics, fixing units that keep homes cool in summer's chokehold, or warm when winter bites. It's not glamorous. No one stops me on the street to marvel at a well-installed compressor, but it's honest work, the kind that leaves your hands calloused and your back aching with purpose. I always thought I was doing it for us, for me and Jane, my wife since our early 20s. We met at a barbecue festival, her laugh cutting through the smoky air after one of my dumb jokes, and that sound hooked me. She was quick-witted, grounded, smarter than me in ways that made me want to be better. She managed an office, talked about going back to school but never did, and together, we carved out a life that wasn't rich but wasn't poor either. Simple, solid, unshakable, or so I thought. No kids, though. We tossed the idea around like a coin we never flipped. Lately, those talks faded, and I figured it was just age practicality settling in. But something was shifting, and I didn't see it until it parked right down the street. It was a Tuesday mid-afternoon, the kind of day where work orders were light, and I wrapped up early, stopping by the hardware store for some fittings before heading home. Our street was quiet. Kids on bikes weaving lazy circles, a dog barking somewhere distant. I was turning into the driveway when I noticed a car a few houses down facing away from our place. Nothing odd, except I saw Jane in the passenger seat, her profile unmistakable. She was leaning close to the driver, a man I didn't know, their bodies tilted toward each other in a way that wasn't casual. His hand rested on the steering wheel inches from her knee, and she was smiling, head tilted, like she was sharing a secret. Then she saw me. Her smile vanished quick as a stage curtain dropping. She stepped out fast, almost tripping, and jogged toward me, already talking. "He's a coworker, Evan. Just a ride home after an off-site meeting," she said, words tumbling out. I nodded, grabbed the mail, but my eyes flicked to the car leather seats, a bottle of high-end cologne in the cup holder, its scent drifting through the open window. Inside, I caught that same smell on her blouse, sharp and foreign. She kept moving, asking about my day, the store, the gas tank, her voice a performance I wasn't part of. I answered, but something lodged in my chest, heavy and unyielding. I told myself to let it go. Maybe it was nothing, a coworker, a moment I'd misread. I didn't want to be that husband, the one who hovers, checks phones, assumes the worst. But that night I couldn't sleep. The ceiling fan spun above me, blades slicing the dark, and I kept smelling that cologne, not mine, not ours. Jane showered, slid into bed like always, but I lay there replaying the last few months. Her quick smiles while texting, locking her phone when she left the room, late nights she blamed on work when her office closed at 5. I'd called it fatigue, life's weight pressing down. Now it felt deliberate, like a tide pulling away before I noticed the shore was bare. The next day I went to work, fixed a unit on a downtown roof, smiled at clients, but a seed had planted itself, small but stubborn. I didn't ask questions, didn't accuse. I just carried on, pretending the ground beneath us wasn't cracking. But it was, and I couldn't unsee it. Each morning, I kissed her goodbye, drove my truck to another job, and wondered what else I'd missed. The air in Mobile was heavy that summer, but the weight in my chest was heavier, and it wasn't just the heat. Something was coming, patient and cruel, waiting for me to catch up. Weeks slipped by like shadows lengthening at dusk, and nothing exploded. No shouting matches, no tearful confessions, just a quiet erosion that chipped away at the foundation we'd built. I kept going to work, climbing ladders and tightening bolts, the hum of compressors drowning out the questions buzzing in my head. But that seed of doubt had taken root, sprouting tendrils that wrapped around every thought. Jane seemed the same on the surface, brewing coffee in the mornings, folding laundry in the evenings. But I started noticing the polish she added to herself, like she was preparing for a stage I wasn't invited to. New foundation on the bathroom counter, high-end stuff she'd never bothered with before. Her hair styled in soft waves, on weekdays brighter lipstick that left faint stains on coffee mugs. She called it a refresh, a way to feel good amid the daily grind. But I'd been married long enough to sense the difference between refreshing and reinventing. And this felt like reinvention, not for me, but for someone whose gaze she craved more than mine. Then there were the phone habits, subtle at first, but they gnawed at me like a persistent drip from a leaky faucet. We used to leave our phones scattered around the house, mine on the coffee table, hers buzzing on the kitchen counter while she stirred dinner. Now hers was glued to her hand, carried from room to room, always face down, notifications silenced. I'd walk in and her thumb would flick the lock screen shut quick as a reflex. Maybe it was work, I told myself, sensitive projects or privacy concerns in this digital age. But that excuse crumbled one warm Thursday evening on the back patio. The sky was turning lavender humidity, clinging like a damp cloth, and I'd grilled chicken, cracked open beers, hoping to bridge the growing gap. She was engaged at first, asking about my latest job, laughing at a story about a client's finicky thermostat. But as the meal progressed, her eyes darted to her phone beside her plate screen, dark but waiting. It lit up suddenly, and she snatched it faster than I'd ever seen, fingers swiping away the notification before I could glimpse much. But I caught it, 2 initials, JT, and a preview, "Miss you already." My fork hovered the world, narrowing to that message, blood pounding in my ears. I chewed, mechanically swallowed, said nothing. She set the phone down, complimented the food, but the silence between us screamed. Who was JT? The man from the car. A coworker or something that crossed lines I'd never imagined. That night after she went to bed, I stood in the kitchen staring at her phone charging on the counter. Locked, of course, with a new passcode I didn't know. Once touching it would have felt like betrayal, but now it was about survival, about grasping at truth, slipping away. The next morning, she was all brightness, making coffee, kissing my cheek like the evening's tension had evaporated. I played along, kissed back, but inside the questions clawed louder. Late arrivals home became routine, blamed on overwhelming work, a new system rollout demanding overtime. She'd walk in smelling of citrus shampoo we didn't stock, waving off dinner because she'd eaten with the team. She stopped cuddling during movies, her questions about my day feeling rote, disengaged. One Saturday, she announced a mandatory seminar, dressing in heels, red lipstick, a new blouse that hugged her figure. She left in a car I recognized, the same one from before, driven by the man she'd dismissed. I nodded, watched them drive off, but instead of fishing as planned, I drove aimlessly, even parked near her office building for an hour. No sign of her. I felt foolish, like a shadow chasing its own tail, but the instinct wouldn't quiet. A week later, nursing a sore shoulder from a heavy compressor, I took the day off and wandered into the laundry room. In the dryer, a black hoodie, not mine, not hers, with a gym logo from across town. Pocket held a receipt, snacks, water gum, 2 energy drinks time-stamped 2 nights prior from a gas station, 2 cities over. She'd claimed late work that evening, come home exhausted, unwilling to talk. I folded it, set it aside, heart sinking as pieces connected. The inconsistencies weren't whispers anymore. They were echoes reverberating through our home. Still, I said nothing, confided in no one. Admitting it aloud would make it real, and I wasn't ready to face that our marriage had fractured, that Jane had drifted, sharing laughs and confidences with another. Emotionally, she was gone, leaving me to navigate the remnants alone. But in the quiet, I began to shift too, not dramatically, but in small ways that armored my heart. I focused on work more intently, taking satisfaction in a perfectly balanced system, the cool air flowing where once there was swelter. At home, I cooked for myself, sometimes simple meals that didn't wait for her. The unease in my chest grew, but so did a resolve, a quiet determination to observe, to understand before acting. The southern heat pressed on, but my internal storm brewed slower, gathering strength in silence. I wondered how long I could hold it together, how many more signs I'd ignore before the dam broke. For now, I endured watching the woman I loved transform into a stranger, one guarded glance at a time. The days blurred into a routine that felt like walking on thinning ice, each step cautious, waiting for the crack that would plunge me under. I kept up the facade at work, joking with my crew about faulty wiring or stubborn Freon leaks, my hands steady as I soldered pipes and calibrated thermostats. Clients saw the same reliable Evan, the one who showed up on time and left their homes comfortable, but inside the discoveries piled up like unpaid bills demanding attention I couldn't ignore. The hoodie lingered in my mind, its fabric a tangible proof of intrusion, but I didn't confront her. Instead, I watched my observations sharpening like a blade against stone. Jane's late nights multiplied her explanations, vague team dinners, urgent deadlines that stretched past office hours. She'd breeze in around 8, purse tossed on the counter, heels kicked off with a sigh, but her energy wasn't drained. It was redirected, glowing from somewhere I wasn't part of. One morning as she rushed out the door, I glanced at our bank app on my phone, a habit I'd fallen into during quiet moments at job sites. There they were, charges from restaurants we'd never visited together, always midday, always enough for 2 salads and sandwiches at a bistro downtown, coffee and pastries at a spot near the river. Work lunches, she'd say if asked, but I didn't ask. I just noted them, screenshots saved to a hidden folder on my tablet, evidence accumulating in digital silence. Then came the physical marks, subtle but searing. One evening she changed into pajamas in the bedroom light, and I saw it, a small red spot on her shoulder. Not a bruise from clumsiness, but a love bite, fresh and deliberate. She caught my stare, flipped her hair over it quickly, and turned away, busying herself with lotion. My stomach twisted, but I said nothing, swallowing the bile as we settled into bed, her back to me like a wall. The scents persisted too, that citrus shampoo mingling with traces of the same cologne seeping into our sheets, our closet. It wasn't ours, didn't belong in the life we'd shared yet. There it was, the intruder I couldn't evict without shattering everything. I started paying attention to her gym bag left unzipped one afternoon. Inside, a second toothbrush, travel-sized, not the kind for solo trips. She claimed it was for work emergencies, but the lie hung thin, transparent. Still, I maintained normalcy, grilling burgers on weekends, discussing neighborhood gossip over breakfast, my voice even as my mind raced. At work, I'd lose myself in the rhythm, diagnosing a rattling condenser, replacing filters caked with dust, finding solace in problems I could fix with tools, not words. The guys noticed my distractions, sometimes asked if everything was all right at home. I'd shrug, crack a joke about the Alabama heat melting my brain, and push on. But the quiet observation deepened, turning into a vigil I hadn't chosen. I'd drive home different routes, eyes scanning for that car, her blue sedan parked where it shouldn't be. One afternoon, I swung by her office unannounced, claiming I was in the area for a supply run, but she wasn't there. Her desk empty, coworkers vague about an off-site errand. I left without a scene, heart pounding. As I climbed back into my truck, the cab suddenly too small for the thoughts crowding in. Was this paranoia or protection? The line blurred, but the evidence mounted each clue, a brick in the wall separating us. Jane seemed oblivious, or perhaps willfully blind. Her affection sporadic, a quick hug before bed, a note left on the fridge about picking up milk. But it felt hollow, performative, like she was checking boxes in a script we'd outgrown. In the evenings, I'd sit on the porch, beer in hand, watching fireflies dance in the humid air, my mind replaying every inconsistency. The growing silence between us wasn't just absence, it was deliberate space, filled with her secrets and my unspoken knowledge. I thought about our early days barbecues and late-night talks, how her laugh used to fill the room like sunlight. Now it echoed faintly, reserved for texts that lit her face in the dark. I didn't explode, didn't demand answers. Instead, I armored myself with patience, knowing the truth was close, simmering beneath the surface. Work became my anchor, the physical labor grounding me, hauling equipment upstairs, feeling the burn in my muscles as a distraction from the ache in my chest. One day a client thanked me profusely for fixing their AC during a heat wave, and for a moment I felt seen, valued beyond the cracks in my personal life. Yet the mounting weight pressed on, turning sleep-fitful dreams haunted by shadows of her with him. I began to detach in small ways, skipping shared rituals like Sunday drives, opting for solo walks along the bayou where the water lapped soothingly against the banks. Jane asked once if I was okay, her voice tinged with something like concern, but I smiled, said it was just the job wearing me down. She didn't press, probably relieved, her own world spinning elsewhere. The philosophical weight hit me during those walks. What does betrayal do to a man who prides himself on loyalty? It doesn't break him outright, it reshapes him, forging resilience from the ruins. I wasn't ready to admit defeat, but the normalcy I clung to was fraying thread by thread. The southern nights grew longer, stars piercing the sky like unanswered questions, and I wondered how much more I could bear before the evidence forced my hand. That hand was forced sooner than I expected, not with a thunderclap, but with the steady drip of revelations that finally overflowed the cup I'd been holding steady for too long. The hoodie in the dryer had been the first solid artifact, its presence mocking the explanations I'd conjured, but it was just the prelude to a symphony of hidden truths unraveling in our home. I tucked it away in the back of the closet, untouched, a silent witness I revisited in quiet moments when Jane was out. The receipt, crumpled in my pocket, became a talisman, proof of excursions she never mentioned, 2 cities over, where familiarity bred not contempt, but clandestine comfort. I didn't wash it, didn't discard it. Instead, I scanned it with my phone, adding to the growing archive of doubts, digitized and hidden. Work pulled me through those days. The physical demands, a welcome distraction crawling under houses to inspect ductwork sweat mixing with dust as I wrestled with insulation emerging filthy but focused. My crew sensed the change, one guy clapping me on the back after a tough install saying I seemed sharper, more driven. I nodded, grateful for the camouflage of competence. At home, the discoveries burrowed deeper, each one peeling back another layer of the illusion we'd maintained. Rifling through her gym bag one afternoon while she was at the store, I told myself it was for laundry. I found not just the second toothbrush, but a small vial of perfume, the kind with notes of jasmine and sandalwood, nothing like her usual light floral. It was half empty, used often, and when I sprayed a test on my wrist, the scent mingled with memories of her late arrivals, a fragrance that whispered of evenings spent elsewhere. I replaced it carefully, heart thudding, and later that night, as she scrolled her phone in bed, I smelled it faintly on her skin. The unexplained absences grew bolder too. She'd leave early for meetings that her calendar app glimpsed over her shoulder showed as blank. One Tuesday, I called her office mid-morning, feigning a forgotten lunch, only to hear from her receptionist that she'd taken the day for personal time. Personal time, two words that echoed like a slammed door. I hung up, stared at my tools scattered on the workbench in the garage and felt the shift begin, not anger's blaze, but a cooling resolve like steel tempering in the forge. The realization crept in during those solitary hours, piecing together the puzzle I'd avoided completing. All the signs, the texts, the scents, the marks, the charges weren't random. They formed a narrative of deliberate distance, a story where I was no longer the lead, but a supporting role fading into the background. I thought about our vows exchanged in a small chapel, with azaleas blooming outside, promises of forever that now felt like echoes in an empty room. Grief hit in waves, not for what was lost, but for what had never been as solid as I'd believed. I started detaching then small acts of self-preservation that built like bricks in a new wall. I withdrew cash in increments 20s and 50s tucked into an envelope in my truck's glove box, a fund for whatever came next. At night, I'd lie awake, her breathing even beside me, and plan scanning our joint documents, mortgage papers, insurance policies, uploading them to a cloud account she didn't know about, password protected and private. Work became my sanctuary, the rhythm of diagnostics and repairs a meditation. I'd climb onto roofs under the relentless sun, testing capacitors and cleaning coils, the heat mirroring the burn inside. A client once shared his own tale of marital woes over iced tea after I fixed his system, words that landed like balm. Sometimes seeing the truth sets you free, even if it hurts like hell. I nodded, filed it away, and drove home with a clearer head. Jane's behavior shifted subtly too, perhaps sensing the undercurrent. She'd linger in the kitchen, offering to make sandwiches, her eyes searching mine for reassurance I no longer gave. But I kept quiet, my responses neutral, my touches brief. The emotional distance grew a chasm I no longer tried to bridge. Instead, I explored it, walking its edges in my mind during long drives between jobs, radio-low thoughts tumbling like leaves in the wind. One evening, as thunder rumbled distant over the Gulf, I sat in the garage sketching idly on a notepad, old radios I'd once tinkered with circuits and dials from memory. It was a hobby abandoned years ago, sacrificed to the routines of marriage, but now it felt like reclaiming ground. Jane poked her head in, surprised, asked what I was doing. "Just passing time," I said, not inviting more. She hesitated, then left the door clicking shut like a period at the end of a sentence. That moment crystallized the shift. Acknowledgement wasn't just about her affair. It was about my own awakening, recognizing that loyalty unchecked becomes a chain. The hidden discoveries had forced the door open, and through it, I saw not just betrayal but possibility, a life beyond the rubble. I researched quietly on my work laptop during lunch breaks. Alabama separation laws, asset division, no-fault grounds, knowledge, arming me like tools in my belt. No explosions, no accusations, just a steady pivot toward detachment, the emotional ties fraying thread by thread. The nights stretched, humidity pressing in, but my resolve hardened. I stopped initiating conversations about our future, let her weekend suggestions hang unanswered. The love bite faded, but its shadow lingered, a reminder that her body, her time, her affections were loaned elsewhere. I grieved in silence, not with tears, but with action, redirecting my energy inward. Friends noticed at a casual barbecue one weekend, commenting on my quieter demeanor, but I brushed it off with a laugh, beer in hand, masking the internal storm. Jane smiled through it all, her facade intact, but cracks showed a forgotten phone left unlocked, once revealing nothing new, but confirming her carelessness. The realization settled deep. The affair was real, long-standing, and my role had diminished to convenience. Emotional detachment wasn't revenge. It was survival, a quiet rebellion against the lies. As the weeks wore on, I prepared not for confrontation, but for the moment when truth would demand its due, patient as the tide eroding the shore. I hadn't planned to stop by the house that day, but fate has a way of steering you toward truths you'd rather drive past. It was a Tuesday mid-morning, the Alabama humidity already thick, clinging to my skin like an unwanted embrace as I loaded tools into the truck after a quick coffee. Halfway through a job across town, I realized I'd left my main tool bag at home: pliers, gauges, the essentials for troubleshooting a finicky evaporator coil. I didn't tell the client anything beyond needing a part, just hopped in the truck and headed back, windows down, to let the breeze cut the heat. It should have been simple, in and out, back to work. But sometimes revelations wait in ambush, timed with cruel precision. As I turned off the main road onto Davis Street, her car caught my eye at the intersection, blue sedan, dented bumper from last year's fender bender. Not near her office, but across town, parked outside a quaint corner cafe, with mismatched chairs and ferns spilling over the entrance, chalkboard signs touting artisanal brews. I slowed, instincts flaring, and pulled into an adjacent lot truck hidden behind a row of vans. No plan, just a tightening in my gut, a pull to see what I dreaded. The cafe's blinds were half drawn, but through a slat gap, there she was at a back table by a bookshelf, not alone. The man across from her, short beard-pressed shirt, was the one from the car all those weeks ago, the coworker she'd dismissed. But this wasn't business. No laptops, no notes. They leaned in, her smile soft and unguarded, the kind I hadn't seen since our early years. His hand covered hers on the table, fingers interlacing with ease, no hesitation. They talked, laughed, her head tilting back as she brushed his wrist, body language, screaming familiarity, comfort, honed over time. This wasn't a fling's awkward start. It was a relationship's middle, settled and intimate. I sat there, a ghost, peering in, my marriage reduced to a spectator sport. Could have stormed in, keys slamming on their table, demanding answers in front of strangers. But something went quiet inside me. Not numb, not raging, just still, like a song ending on a faded note. I watched them stand, pay, exit together, his hand on her lower back, her leaning into it. They crossed to his car, him opening the passenger door as she slid in without a glance back. I didn't follow, didn't need to. The scene replayed in my mind as I drove away, tool bag forgotten again. That afternoon, my phone buzzed with her text: "Works crazy, meetings all day, home late, don't wait for dinner." The lie stung fresh, but it broke something, not because of the deception, but because the confusion lifted, replaced by clarity, sharp as a blade. When I finally grabbed the bag and returned to the job, my hands worked on autopilot, tightening fittings, checking pressures, but my mind mapped next steps. No more denial. The betrayal was full daylight clear. At home that evening, she arrived around 8, routine as ever, pursed down, heels off shower bed. I said nothing, stared at the ceiling as she slept, the rubble of our life settling around me. In the days after, I let myself look deeper, not out of obsession, but necessity. The second toothbrush in her bag bank, charges for lunches untaken with me, the love bite she'd hidden, they all confirmed what I'd witnessed. I became a quiet archivist, noting patterns, her seminar weekends, aligning with his car's appearances, texts that made her flush. Silent preparations began, then deliberate as my work repairs. I opened a new checking account at a distant bank, transferred small sums weekly, overtime, pay bonuses, building a buffer without alarm. Scanned deeds, titles, policies into encrypted files on my work tablet, hidden behind innocuous folders. Researched Alabama laws late at night on my phone. No-fault divorce, equitable distribution, protecting assets earned through sweat. It wasn't revenge, it was reclamation, ensuring I wouldn't be left adrift when the end came. Work grounded me, clients thanks, A reminder of my worth beyond her gaze, fixing a family's heat during a chill snap, their gratitude warming what she had cooled. Jane noticed the shift, vaguely asking if I was okay, suggesting a weekend getaway to reconnect. I smiled, said maybe, but inside detachment grew. She offered affection. Hands on my chest in bed, but I lay unmoving, her touch foreign now. Panic flickered in her eyes, but she didn't know why, her guilt perhaps stirring. I withdrew more, eating alone, sometimes reading books in the garage under a single bulb. The theater continued, her playing devoted wife me, the oblivious husband, but the script had flipped. Her desperation mounted subtly, checking my phone, questioning texts from coworkers, but I gave nothing, my calm a shield. The witnessing had shattered illusions, prompting not outburst, but strategy. I grieved the marriage in private walks by the water where waves lapped at pilings, mirroring erosion's slow work. Philosophical musings crept in. Betrayal doesn't just steal trust. It gifts perspective, forcing you to rebuild from within. I started gym visits sporadically, weights heavy, but liberating, body strengthening as resolve did. Jane's gestures intensified, home-cooked meals, lingering touches, but they bounced off my growing armor. The depth of her infidelity seen up close had confirmed everything. And in that confirmation, I found the prompt to prepare, silent and sure, for the separation that loomed like storm clouds over the bay. The clarity from that cafe window didn't spark a firestorm. It fueled a calculated calm, like troubleshooting a complex system where every wire matters. I dove deeper into preparations actions, as methodical as my HVAC repairs, measuring pressures, sealing leaks before they flood the whole unit. First came the financial safeguards, subtle shifts that wouldn't raise alarms. I rerouted my direct deposit, splitting paychecks so only essentials hit our joint account, enough for bills, groceries, the mortgage, while the rest funneled into my new solo one. Overtime bonuses, once shared, splurges now padded this buffer, growing steadily, like interest compounding in the dark. I went paperless on everything, statements emailed to a private address I checked during lunch breaks at job sites, phone angled away from prying eyes. No fanfare, just quiet clicks on my screen, securing what I'd earned through years of sweat-soaked shirts and calloused hands. Grieving the marriage's end was a private affair, waves crashing in during solitary moments, driving between calls, radio off, the hum of tires on asphalt, a backdrop to memories replaying. Our wedding day here in white lace, under Spanish moss, vows that echoed sincere then, but hollow now. Lazy Sundays in bed, plans for kids that faded like morning fog. I mourned not just the betrayal, but the illusion, the years invested in a partnership that had become one-sided. At home, I pretended normalcy, chopping vegetables for dinner as she chatted about her day, my nods masking the internal unmooring. We'd eat on the patio, fireflies flickering, and I'd compliment her cooking while feeling like an actor in a play nearing its final act. Sleep came fitful, her form beside me, familiar yet foreign, a reminder of what was slipping away. Asset protection extended beyond money. I photographed everything, furniture we'd picked together, tools in the garage, even the china set from her aunt. Digital copies uploaded to my cloud, timestamps proving ownership if things turned contentious. I researched more on separation forums of men in similar straits, sharing tips on no-fault filings, how Alabama divided debts and properties equitably. Not vengeful, but practical. If she planned her exits in secrecy, I'd mirror with transparency to myself. Work remained my constant, diagnosing blower motors gone bad, replacing them with efficient hums that mirrored my own rebuilding. A coworker, noticing my focus, asked if I'd taken up meditation. I laughed, said something about clear air clearing the mind, but inside, it was strategy sustaining me. Jane's behavior evolved in tandem, her panic simmering beneath attempts at reconnection. She'd plan dinners out, suggest movies we'd once loved, her hand seeking mine on the couch. I went along sometimes, holding back just enough to keep the facade, but my touches were polite, not passionate. She offered a weekend trip to the coast, waves and seafood to reset us. I said we'd see, calendar open but commitment withheld. Guilt flickered in her eyes, or maybe fear of exposure, but she didn't confess, clinging to the charade. I caught her glancing at my phone, once screen dark on the counter. She claimed to be wiping a smudge, but the swipe marks told otherwise. Her jealousy brewed questions about my late jobs, probing for cracks in my story, but I gave bland answers, turning the mirror on her deflections. In the quiet hours, I expanded my self-protection to emotional realms, journaling thoughts in a notebook hidden in my truck. Reflections on identity beyond husband. On hobbies shelved like dusty parts. I sketched again, pencils, scratching circuits of old radios, the act therapeutic rebuilding neural pathways long dormant. Gym visits became regular weights, lifted not for show but strength muscles aching in solidarity with my heart. I ate cleaner protein and greens, fueling a body I'd neglected mirror, reflecting a man emerging from shadow. Friends at work commented, one inviting me to a fishing trip. I went lines cast into the bayou conversations light, but affirming my existence outside her orbit. The shared life persisted on the surface, laundry folded together, bills paid in tandem. But underneath, I detached, no longer investing in joint dreams. She baked cornbread one night, my favorite, eyes hopeful as I ate. Thank you, I said, genuine but distant, the taste bittersweet. Her tears came later, muffled in the shower, a sound that tugged but didn't pull me back. Comforting her would reopen wounds I'd bandaged. Instead, I let the water drown it out, staring at stars through the window. Philosophical weight settled. Healing isn't confrontation's blaze, but detachment's slow burn, protecting the self when trust erodes. By month's end, my preparations solidified. P.O. box for mail truck title, solely in my name, credit cards separated. Everything legal, controlled, a safety net woven in silence. Jane hovered, more notes by the coffee maker, hands on my back as I left for work, but it was possession, not partnership. I smiled, kissed her cheek, but my mind was elsewhere, planning the next phase. The grieving eased into acceptance, the end, not a cliff, but a gradual slope I'd navigate alone. Work calls came, steady clients, grateful for reliable fixes mirroring my internal repairs. The house felt like a stage, set props in place, but actors disengaged. I wasn't waiting for her move. I was making mine, discreet and determined, the marriage's ghost fading as I stepped into light. Life didn't halt in the wake of my preparations. It trudged on, numb and mechanical, but beneath the surface a spark waited to ignite change I hadn't anticipated. I rose each day, fixed air conditioners with the same precision, replaced filters in dusty attics, smiled through client chit-chat, all while the knowledge of her betrayal clung like a shadow. Jane slept beside me, her presence a mix of habit and haunting, laughing at TV shows, clipping coupons at the table, posting meal photos online as if our world hadn't tilted. But I saw her differently now, not as my partner, but a performer in a role sustained by guilt or convenience, waiting to exit on her terms. I wasn't waiting anymore. My moves were silent, rerouting mail to a P.O. box, paying off the truck, removing my name from her credit card. Every step legal, controlled, a quiet assertion of independence. Then came the small moment that shifted everything, not with drama, but a gentle nudge towards self-rediscovery. At my usual diner during lunch, corner booth, lukewarm coffee, fried catfish. The waitress, a kind-eyed woman in her 50s who'd served me through countless meals, refilled my cup and smiled. "You look good today, Evan. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." No flirtation, just a passing compliment, warm and unassuming. But it struck like a match in dry tinder. I hadn't heard words like that in years, not from Jane, not from anyone who'd truly seen me. I'd forgotten the feel of visibility, of mattering beyond utility. It wasn't about her. It was a reminder that I existed, valuable in my own right, not just as backdrop to someone else's story. That evening, home early, Jane stirred pasta, half-heartedly, phone in one hand. I washed up and mentioned offhand the compliment, a pebble tossed into still water. She froze, spoon suspended, then laughed too sharply, sarcasm lacing her words before silence fell. She ate, little phone untouched, the ripple spreading. That night, she curled against me in bed, hands sliding over my chest, breath waiting. I stayed still, sealing my focus, my inaction speaking volumes. Over days, her behavior morphed, questions about my day, laced with new interest, hands lingering, real meals cooked instead of quick fixes. One morning, her fingers pressed my back as I left, a plea to remember her presence. But it wasn't love resurfacing. It was panic control, fraying, the illusion cracking. Not fear of losing me, but of another claiming what she'd discarded. She began snooping my phone, checked in the shower's steam. She claimed relocation, but smudges betrayed her. Questions about texts followed her stare, unblinking behind a smile. Jealousy stemmed not from care, but ownership. Bitter irony, given my past doubts labeled paranoid. Now, as I distanced, she spun. I accelerated change, waking early for gym sessions. Weights, heavy but empowering body reshaping as sweat purged the stagnation. New shirts fitted better shave cleaner cologne, switched not for others, but to reclaim the man in the mirror respected and whole. Crew at work noticed boss quipped about dating. I smiled, said I was tending to myself. Jane saw too, her unease mounting calls during shifts, voicemails stacking, if unanswered texts doubling. One Saturday, she planned a coastal drive spontaneous, she claimed lunch by waves. I went, listened, smiled appropriately, but held back, hand loose in hers. Home. Her shower sobs echoed raw and steady, mourning a bond she'd severed. I didn't enter, couldn't offer solace too late after lies. That night, awake but calm, I felt detachment's peace, a dockside watcher, as her ship faded, no urge to pursue. The compliment had revived me, echoing worth before her neglect sparking transformation from overlooked to self-possessed. Summer deepened house, a museum of routines, hollow echoes in every exchange. I withheld pieces she'd neglected, breakfast solo, one plate pan, rinsed before she rose. Groceries personal, my bar's juice detergent. Pantry shifting without her staples. She watched confusion blooming unspoken. Financial reins tightened, joint account, minimal rest secured privately. Everything encrypted, passwords changed, backups made. TV evenings solo for her, wine alone. I read books, ran evenings, music blaring in the garage to mask her steps. She tested boundaries, questions casual at first, where I'd been delayed texts, phone calls outside. Gestures followed, cornbread baked dress. I once favored, new boots gifted. I thanked, stored them, unworn, unreachable now. Mornings I left silently, her waking alone messages, mid-morning unanswered till later, brief replies. Detachment, quiet tide receding unnoticed till vast. She cooked, waiting, makeup, weekends, trip suggestions, fall-bound. I nodded, thought about it, moved on. Her smile wavered. Her patterns, clear affection, bursts, post-distance investment elsewhere while using me for stability. Now security waning, she clawed back, but I rebuilt silently. Gym pushed limits, runs, blurring vision, lifts, trembling arms, not punishment but reclamation. Eating better, sleeping sounder, self as priority. Work projects, new recertifications lapsed, renewed weekends for momentum. Ty asked if someone knew. I laughed. Myself. He puzzled, but I understood. A Saturday solo drive past Bayou La Batre dockside, with notebook listing, wants, sketches, radio fixes, dawn walks. Hobbies traded for stability, but no repeat mistake. Pencils bought, garage desk lit, sketching resumed. Jane interrupted, once lingered expectant. I offered no invite, she left quietly. She unused to my separate world, assuming my orbit hers. But gravity broken, I directed anew. Evenings mine, bookstore browses, coffee solos, pier walks. Ran into high school friend hours, talk, unfiltered, reminding pre-negotiation self. Home, Jane queried. I told her, smile tight, jaw tense, not curious, scared of replacement. But I shed her layers, falling with solo dinners, reclaimed pursuits. Peace emerged, honest living worth, independent of her gaze. Choosing self, not allowed, required. I didn't tell anyone about the unraveling, not friends or family, because this wasn't a spectacle to broadcast. It was a private return to the core of who I was, deliberate and unspoken. Jane spiraled in ways that mirrored my earlier doubts. Her checks on my phone becoming less subtle, questions laced with a forced casualness that betrayed her unease. She'd hover near the door during my calls, suddenly interested in routines she'd long ignored, dressing up for evenings at home, as if to recapture a spark that had dimmed. I offered no explanations, no reassurances. My responses even and emotionless, a calm that unsettled her more than any argument could. The roles had fully reversed, she, the uncertain one, feeling unseen and untrusted, while I moved through days with newfound steadiness. Methodical withdrawal defined those final weeks, each action a step away from the shared life that had become a cage. Breakfasts were mine alone, coffee brewed for one, the kitchen silent as I rinsed my mug before she stirred. Groceries followed suit, items tailored to my tastes, no longer consulting her list, the fridge filling with essentials that didn't include her favorites. She noticed eyes lingering on the shifted pantry, but said nothing, the confusion etching lines on her face. Financially, the separation was complete, joint funds, minimal, My earnings secured elsewhere, every bill digitized and backed up. I stopped watching TV with her, her solo wine nights on the couch, a ritual I no longer joined. Instead, I lost myself in books or evening runs, the pavement pounding underfoot, a rhythm of liberation. Evenings became sanctuaries of self-bookstore visits where shelves offered worlds unbound by betrayal. Coffee sipped slowly in quiet cafes, pier walks where the water's murmur soothed the remnants of ache. Running into that old friend had opened doors to more casual meetups, laughs over beer that reminded me of connections beyond marriage's confines. Home late Jane's queries met with honest but brief answers, her tight smiles masking the fear not of loss, but of being supplanted in a narrative she'd controlled. But replacement wasn't my aim. It was erasure of her hold, shedding layers of dependency with every solo dinner, every reclaimed hobby. Sketching in the garage evolved pages, filling with intricate designs, radios disassembled and rebuilt, the tactile work-healing fractures I hadn't named. Peace settled in gradually. Not the hollow kind of numbness, but a profound calm born from authenticity. Knowing my worth didn't hinge on her validation. I pushed at the gym body, transforming into something strong and self-sufficient, meals nourishing a spirit awakening. Work flourished too new. Certifications earned, projects tackled with vigor that drew praise from the boss and crew. Ty's question lingered, but my answer held true. I was seeing myself anew, investing in the man who'd been overshadowed. Jane's desperation peaked. Accusations of infidelity hurled one evening, tears in the bathroom, notes on my pillow pleading for talks. I never raised my voice, never denied or affirmed. My serenity was the response, unnerving her as she grappled with the shift. One morning, the decision crystallized not in anger, but quiet resolve. I packed a bag with essentials, clothes, sketches, tools, keys in hand, the weight lifting from my chest like mist burning off in sunlight. No announcement, no farewell scene, just a note on the counter, simple and final. I know and I'm done, take care. She called as I drove away, voicemails begging, apologizing, promises tumbling out. I let them ring unanswered, the road stretching ahead like possibility unbound. Freedom wasn't triumphant fanfare. It was this stillness, a man reclaiming his path without looking back. The house receded in the rearview, mobile streets giving way to open highway, the humidity softening as miles accumulated. I stopped at a diner, midway, not the usual one, but a new spot with vinyl booths and coffee strong enough to chase away ghosts. Sitting there sketching idly on a napkin, I reflected on the journey, not with bitterness, but a softened understanding of how betrayal had been the catalyst for rebirth. Jane would navigate her own aftermath, perhaps learning from the silence she'd sown, but that was hers to carry now. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the asphalt, I felt the final threads of our shared story unravel gently, leaving behind a tapestry woven anew with threads of self-reliance and quiet strength. The ache that once gripped my chest had softened into a faint echo, a reminder of lessons learned rather than wounds unhealed, reassuring me that time's gentle flow mends what words cannot. Driving onward, the landscape blurred into a soothing haze of greens and blues, each mile a whisper of possibility, inviting me to embrace the unknown with open arms and a heart no longer burdened. In this newfound solitude, I discovered not emptiness, but a profound fullness where every breath drew in the essence of freedom, untainted and pure, allowing me to step lightly into tomorrows shaped by my own hands. The road ahead curved softly like a promise fulfilled in hushed tones, fading into the horizon where worries dissolved and peace reigned supreme, a gentle close to chapters past.